You're listening to Expertly Said, a podcast on the art and impact of communication. I'm Kristen Sweeney, founder and CEO of Every Little Word. My guest today is Zach Randles-Friedman. Zach is a podcast host, content creator, and corporate communications professional known for blending authentic storytelling with sharp cultural commentary. He is the voice behind two growing podcasts. On Everything and Anything and A Bit Gay, Zach sits down with a wide range of guests for candid, unfiltered conversations about identity, relationships, personal growth, and the moments that shape who we are. On Listen Up, Girl, Zach delivers fast-paced LGBTQ+ news and cultural commentary, breaking down the biggest headlines with clarity, personality, and perspective. Beyond podcasting, Zach works in global corporate communications, where he focuses on digital strategy, brand storytelling, and amplifying meaningful narratives at scale. Across everything he does, his mission is to create content that connects, informs, and sparks real conversation. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast, so I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm really happy to have you. I think we're going to have a little bit of a meta chat about podcasting itself. So
Yes.
that's going to be a super fun conversation today.
Meeting with another podcaster is always so fun to me. I don't know why. I like it.
It's like, tell me about your microphone,
Yeah, because it's going to be good quality camera and mic, so you're not going to have to go through all that. So.
The lighting. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So we heard a little bit of the contours, a little bit of the more broad strokes. I'd love to tell us a little bit more about your origin story. It sounds like kind of the career in communications came first and podcasting is a little bit of a later development. So did you
Yeah.
always know you wanted to be a communicator?
So no. So I had a psychology degree from university, from undergrad, and I moved, and I knew during an internship in college that I was not going to do psychology and move on with it, because I did this internship and we had to go meet this little with a trained psychologist or psychiatrist. We went to this school and this girl was in the fourth grade, and we met with her, and she was being abused by her grandmother and her father and her father's girlfriend, like sexually and physically. And I left there and I just could not stop thinking about it. And I'm like, I can't do this my whole life and like have these sad stories. Like, I just can't, this is not for me. So grew up in Miami and I'm like, I'm leaving, going to New York, got a job as like an executive assistant for this nonprofit, making no money. Went to New York, did the nonprofit job for about 9 months, and I realized I cannot make it on this amount of money, and so I ended up getting a job at Chase Manhattan Bank at the time, and doubled my salary, and then I was an executive assistant there also, and this woman was, like, the highest probably ranking woman at the bank, and she was very much like Amanda Priestley from The Devil's Wear Prada, where everyone was scared of her when she walked in. She walked in with her big fur coat, and but she was so nice to me. She got another promotion where she was going to report directly to the president of the company and said, "Do you want to come with me? Because we're moving down to the executive floor, or do you want to do something else? I want you to take a day and think about it." So I came back and I said, "I want to do something else." And she's like, "I knew this was going to happen." And so she says, "Well, what do you wanna do? I'm gonna give you 2 choices. You can either do HR, I can get you a job in HR, or you can do this new thing and learn how to build websites." And I came back and I said, "I wanna do HR." And she says, "No, we're not doing that. You're gonna go to NYU, we're gonna pay for it, and you're gonna learn how to build and design websites."
My gosh.
So I went to NY. She sent me that every day, 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock every day, 4 days a week. I was going for, I don't know, months. I would go and I learned how to build websites and design them. And then she got me a job in this other department. I quickly, after I put this on my LinkedIn, got recruited for Merrill Lynch, went and worked for Merrill Lynch for 6 years doing all this design, websites, internal communications, like all this stuff. And then I moved back to Miami from New York because I was working for Merrill Lynch, which was attached to the World Trade Center during 9/11, and I just like
Mm,
needed to get out because
yeah.
New York changed for me then. And I ended up getting a job at a pharmaceutical company, and it was it was websites, and social media wasn't really a thing quite at that point. And then, I went and worked for GSK and then Bayer, and then just kind of, like, kept doing things in corporate communications around mostly digital. And then it was more external comms with digital, and then, I've worked at Pfizer and GSK and a company called B1 Medicines that recently, and, it's been great, but it's, the corporate world. When I was at this one company that I was head of US communications, it was a skincare company, they asked me to do a podcast. And I said, "I don't like my voice. I don't wanna be seen on camera. Like, I don't really wanna do this. Can we get somebody else?" And like, "Can you do it? And you don't even have to listen to the podcast," which was not at all the case 'cause I had to approve everything.
Yeah.
And so I do the podcast. Um, it went very well. I did like one full season. I ended up leaving the company. And whenever I left, I moved back to Boston and I kind of like missed it in a way. And I got used to my voice and I got used to seeing myself on camera. So I was okay with it. So a friend of mine that's really into video and podcasting said, "Why don't you just do your own podcast? Like you can talk and you can get guests and all this, and you know a lot of people, to like try it." I'm like, "All right, I'll try it." So I did it. I had some friends on it first. There were people that I wanted to interview, no celebrities really, just, like, people who I thought were
Yeah.
interesting. I found them on TikTok or
Nice.
something, and found them, and they would come on, and then I got some publicists that started reaching out to me to get guests on, and then it just kinda just, like, kept going, and I would only interview people who I thought were interesting, and they didn't have to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. It was just anybody, psychics, mediums. I have a woman that, she's a true survivor. She was cheated on by her husband for 12 years, and she's now got a thriving business, and she's just an amazing person. And I've just interviewed all these different people, almost 200 people I've interviewed in 2 years, and it's just changed my way of thinking about things, like, the way what I think about death now has changed because of the
Yeah.
people I've talked to.
Yeah.
And I stay away from politics in my podcast, and I interview people who I think have an inspirational story, they're inspiring, they're a survivor. I've talked to cult survivors, um, I I do talk to some people that are, um, a little different, where this woman thinks that she's, and maybe she is. I interviewed her, and so I go with the flow. She, thinks that she talks to aliens and thinks that she's goes to their planet and stuff, so, she's got a
Wow.
huge TikTok following, and people are into it, and I thought she'd be interesting to interview, and she was very interesting,
Yeah.
and I have no judgment. You can do whatever you want, so I ended up just, like, really loving doing a podcast, and, it's like whenever I'd go on holiday or vacation or I was traveling for work, there was moments where I was like, "God, I can't wait to get home and do an interview with somebody because I, like, love meeting all these interesting people. Because I would
That's
never have
awesome.
exposure to any of these people if I wasn't doing
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
podcast."
I feel similarly, I started this podcast in 2025 and I had I was a year out from having moved out of Boston back to Tampa, Florida, and, I mean, it's great. There's a lot happening here, but not quite as much as there was
Yeah,
in Boston, and,
yeah,
my company's been remote since long before it was cool, and I have young kids, and, the fact is, like, it's not that easy for me for, several reasons to, like, just get out and go meet people, like, actually
yeah,
meet people, and I think that's even harder to really be in community than ever before, and this has been such a great avenue to, be able to have, like, really meaningful conversations and walk away feeling like that was maybe one interaction with someone, but it
yeah,
was like, it meant a lot more than, a quick handshake or a little bit of, like, banter about the weather, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at my company that I just actually left,
Okay.
they talked about doing a podcast. I'm like, "Listen, I have a podcast." They're like, "Yeah, we know. When we hired you, we Googled you and we found all your stuff." So I'm like, I'm glad I didn't do anything bad on my podcast. Um, and they're like, "Yeah, try it for a season and see how it goes." And
Yeah.
so I did interviews with our, CEO, and he told a great story about his whole history, and it got like 500,000 views, his video
Gosh,
on
yeah,
podcast listen. And then there was just I interviewed patient advocacy people for oncology patients, and the podcast did very, very well. And um, I'm not working there anymore, and they still have one more episode to release, but I'm not sure what's happening after that because they don't have
yeah,
anybody else that knows how to do it. So,
yeah.
but it was a great podcast. I really like doing it,
Mhm.
and but now I have my two podcasts that are my own, and that's what I'm doing full time now, which is kind of
Awesome.
crazy.
That's amazing. And I know we're going to talk a bit more in our one big idea section about that transition and what it's been like
Yeah,
for you on a few different levels. First, because you lived in New York, and I have too. And so the first question anyone asks each other is where? Where were you? I was in Astoria, Queens, off 36th Ave at the end.
I moved a lot. So I started in the Upper East Side.
Okay.
And then I moved from a studio to a one-bedroom in the Upper East Side, and then I moved to Park Slope, and
All
then I moved
right.
back to Miami, and then I moved back to New York, and then I lived in Hell's Kitchen.
Amazing. Amazing.
And now I'm in Boston, I'm in Medford.
So I would have seen you everywhere except maybe Park Slope. That's a little
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah, yeah,
The other thing I loved, was that you mentioned Devil Wears Prada. So there's a joke in my family because when I moved to New York, I moved as an actor, and so it was catering and temping.
yeah.
My very first temp job was for I was the assistant to the assistant. Like
Oh,
just
wow.
like yeah, it was for like 3 days. The second assistant had to get bumped up to first assistant, and I was there to cover her.
Yeah,
And it was a woman for like I don't know if it was Us Weekly, but that kind of a magazine.
yeah,
And she would literally be like, "Heat this oatmeal for 37 seconds." Like she would tell you. Um, I don't know how I made it those few days. I was like brand new to the city, and I was like, "Is this what it's like to live here every
yeah,
day? This is horrifying."
yeah. I mean, the great thing about her is that she would come in with this huge fur coat, and she would take the subway also, and from
Wow.
the Upper East Side where she lived. She would have me go off to, I don't know, Ferragamo and pick up stuff for her, like, husband's present, and then she's like, "Can you go to Saks Fifth Avenue? I need these pantyhose and this color," and then so I was, like, doing all these, like, personal things for her. I didn't care, and the thing is that she was so nice to me. She wasn't so nice to everybody else, but
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
knew that I and she would like, they had, administrative assistant day, and, like, all the administrative assistants are getting flowers on their desk and stuff. She comes by, she goes, "Listen, I know you don't want no flowers. Here's a $5,000 check from our own account." I'm like, "Yeah,
Wow.
awesome." I'm, like, have no money living in New York, so
Yeah.
$5,000, like,
Yeah.
got me a lot, so I was very happy
Wow.
with that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can learn a lot from those folks. Like I said, I was just there a few days and was definitely terrified the whole time,
Well, the
but I
funny
made
thing
it.
is
I made it.
The funny thing is she shaped my whole life because if I didn't go to
Yeah.
NYU and learn how to do websites, I would have been some HR professional, probably doing something completely different.
Yeah.
And she made me go before the internet was cool and like learn how to do it. And I found her like a couple of years ago online and sent her an email saying, "You have no idea the impact you had on my life."
God, that's so
And she was
cool.
so appreciative of it. Like she loved it.
Well, anytime you hear something like that from somebody, even in ways that are so small, and I can imagine, as someone who creates content for a living, that
Yeah.
sometimes we don't always know, and it's really meaningful when somebody takes the time to, um, like just share what it meant to them. And I think it's a good reminder that on the one hand, we're always looking for more, more, more in terms of metrics, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you're like really touching a handful of people or a small number of people in a way that's going to influence them or really make a difference, like it's at kind of the core of what we're really trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, she was a woman working in the late '90s and banking, one of the few women in an all-male world, and she had to, like, go far beyond and improve herself, and, like, there were men that were scared of her, and I loved that about her,
Yeah.
so because
Yeah.
she made her place, and she was such a strong woman, and I just, like, appreciate her so much.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
tell me, I want to dig in a little bit to on the on the comms side. That transition you made when you went into life sciences, and were there any hurdles for you in kind of transitioning from finance? What was it like to move into that space? Or were you mainly able to keep like the thread of the kind of the digital experience as the backbone?
Yeah, but it's a I mean, banking is regulated too, but it's regulated in a different way.
Mhm.
Pharmaceutical marketing, digital marketing is so hard to do, like, because there's so much. It's not just I mean, it's the FDA in the US, but then you think about what's happening in the EU and Canada and
Yeah.
Latin America and Asia Pac. You have all these different regulations across when you're doing things, and the US is actually less restrictive than anywhere else. And so learning all that and learning what you can and can't do from a digital standpoint. Plus I was working at GSK at the time and social media was coming out. And I'm really dating myself.
That's all
Um,
right. Same.
but
With you.
and I was working for the dermatology company or department at GSK. And I said, we need to do a Facebook page. And they're like, no, you can't do that in pharmaceutical. I'm like, let's try it. We won't talk about products. We'll talk about disease state. We'll talk about things to do for your skin. We'll do skincare facts. And we did it, and it was so successful. People were like jumping on it. And then we got like a write up somewhere about GSK is the first pharma company to do a Facebook page or something. And it just, then they're like, all right, now what do you want to do? And I kind of got more freedom because I proved it. Like, you want to do Twitter? Do you want to do, like, what do you want to do? I think we did Pinterest or something like that, which wasn't as successful as Facebook at the time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, so I think it was different just because I had to learn all the regulations. And
Mhm.
I felt like but I was digital. Nobody knew digital, and I felt like I was teaching people digital as I was doing it because no one knew about Facebook. People didn't know what a good website was, like, and coming in and talking about how, social media drives people to your website or drives people to, a campaign. Like, nobody got it. And they're like, well, a website, like, why do we really need a website? I'm like, of course you do. Like, that's the front door to your products. Like,
Yeah.
that's what you
Yeah.
need. And so it was like a lot teaching, like a lot of executives about why we
Mhm.
needed social, why we needed to do, paid ads and all this stuff. So it was great. I really loved it.
Yeah. Did you find like, having to work within a lot of constraints, like, did you find it really stifling, or were you like, "I love the challenge of, here's all these things I can't do, how do I find the way?" Like, how did it sort of
Yeah.
feel to you?
I pushed the envelope a lot where I
Mhm.
never was gonna break the rules, but I
Sure.
wanted to go right to the edge, and I'd
Mhm.
have to meet with legal and regulatory a lot to say, "This is what I'm doing, and this is why it's not gonna get us in trouble."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, nobody's done this before." I'm like, "I know, but let's do it." And
Yeah.
because we're not talking about product, we're talking about disease state, and we're talking about, who we are as our corporate narrative and stuff. So there was times where I was really frustrated because I'd put so much work into it, and they're just like, "Nope, it's too far. You can't do it." And I'm just like, "What? I don't understand." But
Yeah.
then I got to go to, another company, Vertex Pharmaceutical, and I got to, like, run all of digital and all of video and kind of the branding, and that is where I really got to kinda be creative. Whenever you're doing video, which was a whole new thing, whenever I went there, like, or when video was really taking off, it was just you could tell patient stories, and you could tell so many great things about what they're
Mhm.
doing in R&D, and just it was just the storytelling with video was just so amazing to me, and I just felt like it's endless possibilities, and I love that job.
Yeah. It sounds like you have really embraced kind of what's next, like, in
Yeah,
communications. So, I'm curious, is AI a big part of what you see coming up next, or what's exciting for you right now, kind of
I think
in the
AI
future?
is definitely, huge. I mean, it's the conversation that was happening at the company I just left,
Mhm.
like, every single day,
Yeah.
and they are at first, everybody was like, "Don't use AI." Then it's like, "You have to use AI," and they've brought in experts that know AI. You have to be careful, obviously, what you put out on these things, but they have an internal version of ChatGPT that they're
Mhm.
using now, so what we're putting in isn't being seen by the public. So, I mean, they're gonna start writing press releases the first
Mhm.
draft with AI and social content. I think they're probably starting to do that now too,
Mhm.
and even when you're thinking about R&D, research and development, they're starting to think about using AI, or they already are probably for that. I think all these
Yeah.
companies are doing this,
Yeah.
and I think it's scary to me. I'm glad I'm at the age and part of my career where I'm at, because I feel like if I was younger, I would be very nervous about what am I gonna be doing in 15 years, because AI is gonna take so many jobs, and of course, there'll be
Yeah.
other things that will come up, but it does if I was younger, I'd definitely be nervous about what jobs are gonna be around in 10 years.
Yeah, I think about that too, and I also think about the most successful applications, um, that I've found is when I'm able to put tons of context and insight and, like, I
Yeah.
really have a heavy hand in the inputs, but that's because I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and, I
Yes.
have really like, I have strong opinions and perspectives, and it's
Yeah.
all of that stuff that as a junior, um, you don't get,
Yeah.
and so it's like, where is that supposed to come from? There's a lot of conversation, but I feel like it is people who are, like, at least, like, mid-career who've built up this base of expertise who are able to use it effectively, but what does that mean for folks who are not having the same opportunities to gain the expertise they need
Yeah.
to be really like, use it effectively as a partner?
What's scary about it, though, is AI that I've discovered since not working. Because 'cause I'm like, "Should I get a job again or should I not?" Like, I went back and forth, and I kept applying for these jobs, and normally I'd get an answer at least 1 out of 10, and then it was like, "None." And then I read 2 articles where people are going in and having AI create a resume for each job description and then sending it in, and then like, all these systems that are receiving, like Workday and stuff that are receiving these resumes have an AI component where they're going in and finding the keyword matches, and if somebody builds their resume in AI, that's how they're getting the job or getting the interview.
Yeah,
It's so crazy.
yeah. It's, I think it's important to remember, like, chatbots talking to chatbots, like, behind it all, there's supposed to be people
Yes,
interacting and making sure
exactly.
we don't lose that in all of
Yeah,
the drive for efficiency.
yeah,
All right. So I want to talk a little bit now, transition to our one big idea. This is a segment on every show where we dig deep into a specific area. So I want to talk about this transition you made to podcast host, but
yep.
also a decision to leave the corporate world to exit life sciences. Um, what was the tipping point for you that like where you said, "Hey, I'm going to really take this leap"?
So, I was doing my podcast, both of my podcasts, and I was doing it after work. It was consuming me till about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night every day. Because at first I was doing all my own editing. I was
Yeah.
doing 2 podcasts and a new show that I was doing 5 days a week.
Whew.
Uh, but it was only like 10 minutes long, and then, video was important part I
Mhm.
realized quickly after I started doing it. And then I finally hired an editor to help me do one of the shows that I do interviews, but finding guests and booking them and following up with them afterwards and following up to make sure they're going to show up and then making sure they can get onto the platform correctly and they have the right headphone and mic and all that. And it was just my entire free time after work and weekends was being consumed by this podcast. But I loved it at the same time. I
Yeah.
really I just I looked forward to talking with the next guest and telling their story and just being able to kind of share that. And then the feedback that you get whenever you have a good interview with someone, it's just like the DMs that you get or the comments you get on YouTube or and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, this makes it all worth it. And I knew something just didn't feel 100% right anymore about doing my corporate job. And I just like they did a restructuring at my company. They got rid of kind of all the middle management, which was me and a few other people, and, I just said, "This is it. This is the sign. I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
look for another job. I'm gonna make this work." And I have an advisor that helps me who's helped some really big podcasters, like just really big people in the industry that I hope to be like one day. And
Mhm.
he's like, "You have something that not a lot of people have. Keep it up and just do it." And I am doing it's been 3 weeks since I've been doing this full time, just my podcast, and I have no idea how I fit in a full-time job because I still like every day I have a list 10 miles
Yeah.
long. I just redid both of my websites and it's just like I'm like, how did I do all this? And I'm getting better guests because I'm taking time to research people. I'm
Mhm.
doing shows like yours and yeah, and I just this is just like what I was meant to do. And I am not saying I won't ever go back to corporate, but right now I'm not really looking that hard. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if I have a LinkedIn alert set up, and if something amazing comes up,
Mhm.
maybe I'll do some consulting. There's a friend that I may do some consulting with that I'm considering, but I just don't want to be stuck Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at this point.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the dark side. Uh,
Yes.
I imagine and I know that the podcast had started, well before you moved on from your last position, but I imagine it's been even though you talked about enjoying the kind of the challenge of working within a highly regulated environment, quite liberating to be in this
Yes.
Wild West, and you can get on and say whatever you want here, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I do not say whatever I want most of the times because I know this is public. And if I ever get a
Yes.
job one day, I am like very conscious of what I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And I share only so much about my personal life
Mhm.
because I learned in the first year that people will look for you and want to get to know you and they think they're your friend because they've heard your podcast. So
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
been a little more private about, just my life in some aspect. It's hard to be though, because if you're talking and somebody's opening up to you about their whole life,
Yeah.
and they ask you a question, you're like, "Oh, I'm not saying anything about it." I mean, but I don't know. I've been advised like, don't say what city you necessarily live in and stuff like that. And I've had to like get all my stuff off of line, my personal information,
Mhm.
and that was like a whole weird thing to me that
Yeah.
I had to do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So like, who cares where I live? And nobody wants to know who I am. They're just listening to my podcast. And like, no,
Right.
it's
Those
people think they know
parasocial
you.
relationships. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Um, yeah.
and until
So that,
recently, we were talking about this before we started recording, until maybe as recently as yesterday, it seems like you had made some intentional choices about kind of I don't know, we think about something like personal brand, that you were choosing different platforms and you had
yeah.
make LinkedIn as more the corporate comms expert and other channels like Instagram, supporting the podcast. Can you talk about how you thought through that decision and
Yeah.
for folks out there who might be thinking, how do I start my own thing, but you know, live in these two worlds?
Yeah. So for a long time, had my Instagram private and Facebook was private. And then whenever I started doing the podcast, I realized I had to open it up to the public and I was
Hmm.
more choosy about what I was putting up there. And now it's mostly about my podcast, my Instagram. LinkedIn was totally professional, and I had a suit on in that picture, my LinkedIn profile, and it was all about corporate communications and digital communications and storytelling and my video work and I was a podcast at my other company, so I did talk about that, but I really just did not put anything about my personal podcast in my LinkedIn. I didn't talk about it at work with anybody unless they brought it up, and people did bring it up because people Google you, especially whenever you're starting a company, and that's why. And so I last night, literally last night at like 10 o'clock, I'm like, it's April 1st. I have been gone for 3 weeks almost. I'm going to change my LinkedIn profile to say that I am a podcast host, a producer, a storyteller. I'm going to end my job at the company I just left and say that I left. And I changed my description. I changed my picture, so I am on a more casual picture when it's wearing a sweater, and it's just, like, not such a corporate stuffy picture. And then I wrote a post just saying, "I've started this as a passion project, and it's turned into something great, and this is what I'm doing full time." And, I got a lot of people that have looked at my profile, and a lot of people have written me messages on LinkedIn today, and I've got a lot of texts saying, "Congratulations, this is
Yeah.
amazing. I wanna do this too." Not a
Yeah.
podcast necessarily, but I wanna go off and do my own thing. And, a lot of people, I think at a certain time or a certain time in your career, you're just like, "How much longer can I do this?" And, yeah, I this is just what I think this is what I was meant to do. Like, I was meant to do this podcast, and I was meant to tell people stories, and because I love it so much, and
Yeah.
you should do something that you love in your life. And I love my other job too. Just, I was doing it for almost 25 years, so,
Mhm.
it was time for a
Yeah.
change.
I it's so great that the positive feedback is so fresh. I think I was just in a conversation with someone earlier today, and we were talking about how, you've built something or do something that other people think is like so they're like, "It's amazing. You're so courageous." All these things. And I don't know about you, but to me, that often just feels like I was just putting one foot in front of the other, and
Yeah,
didn't feel easy. It didn't, necessarily. And so it's really important, I think, to take those moments to look back and be like, I did that thing. And not that it's about everybody else, but not everybody would have made these choices that I made, would have committed to it, would have made the leap, like would have done those things. And so I love
yeah.
that you're getting those uh well deserved congratulations on it.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's so strange though because I go back and forth in my head, and I'm like, "Did I make a mistake? Like, should I be looking for a job?" And I had a 401k and insurance and all this stuff and all these benefits,
Yeah.
I'm very happy with the money I'm making on the podcast and stuff, but, it's like you're on your own. I've
You're
never
on your
not
own.
worked. I
Yeah.
worked for a company since I started working when I was 16 because my dad said, "I'll buy you a car, but you gotta pay for your own gas and insurance after
Yeah.
6 months." So I had to get like a job working at the mall or something, and I
Yeah.
was, 16. So this is the first time where I'm working for myself. I've always worked, and it's scary and crazy, but I love it.
Yeah. I'm glad you're loving it. And I think that there's like a something that has to happen for you to be able to take yourself seriously, not you specifically, but I'm certainly
Yeah,
speaking for me of being like, this is a real job, but the fact that I'm accountable to myself and not somebody else,
yeah,
um, is it's a gap that I think has to be navigated because it's easy to feel like, yeah, I don't know, just that
yeah.
responsibility to yourself and being like, I'm enough to be authoritative and say I report to work every day to
You
me,
have
the
to have a
boss.
routine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have a
Yes.
routine because yeah, I get up every day. I sleep in a little later than I used to, but I
Good
get
for
up every
you.
day.
Perks of the
I'm
job.
Yeah, and I make my coffee in the morning, and I come up, and I have a whole thing. I need to get more of a routine though, where I'm doing the same thing kind of every day. I'm also have realized how much time I put here, and then I like look at the clock and it's like 6:30. I'm like, I just sat in this chair for 9 hours and did not even go outside at all.
Yeah.
And I have to
Yeah.
stop that. Like, I have to go for a walk in the middle of the day. I don't even eat lunch sometimes because I'm just like, I'm so into what I'm doing. And yeah, I need a better routine. I have a routine, but I need to like lay it out more. And I need to be a little more strategic like I was at my job. I need to be more strategic about
Mhm.
how I'm going to continue building this podcast. Because right now I've gotten so many people that want to, I'm just the scheduling piece and scheduling when these episodes are going to come out and stuff is just I need to get past that and start thinking, "Okay, how do I grow this brand?" That's what I
Yeah.
have to
Love
do.
that. Love that. I have one more question for you, and it's actually about the show itself, before we head into one of our final sections here. So you talked about in your bio, we heard about wanting to spark real conversation, and you've talked about these guests who
Yeah.
the main draw is like their interesting stories. How do you think about, like, drawing them out or creating the conditions so that you have a really good quality conversation with someone and not something that kind of feels too surface level or doesn't really, like, go to those interesting places?
Yeah, I've not had an interview yet where somebody held back, and because
Love
I
that.
am and I feel very fortunate that that's happened. I really just have a conversation. I don't usually write down questions for people. I have a few bullet points 'cause I research who they
Mhm.
are or what they've done. If they're an author of a book, I'll try to read their book ahead of time. But I really just wanna know about them. If they ask I want them to tell their story, how they wanna tell it. I'll sometimes have to guide some people just to make sure that they're saying the right things. Um, I just interviewed a woman who's never done a podcast. I found her on TikTok. She has multiple personalities. She's goes on TikTok and says, "I have multiple personalities, ask me anything you want." And thought it was so vulnerable of her to do. She has agoraphobia where she doesn't leave her house either. And I
Wow.
said, "Will you come on my show and talk about this?" She was an amazing guest. Opened up about the reason why she has multiple personalities because of a childhood trauma. She talked about what she's doing. She talked about her husband, how he's supportive. And then we put the episode out, and she got flooded with people saying, "I am so thankful for you talking about your mental health. Like, you have helped me in so many ways. I thought I was the only one." Not necessarily having multiple personalities, but I have mental health issues. I have so much anxiety. And the fact that you talked about this on a podcast and this many people heard it, I respect you so much. And her episode did fantastic. And she got so much amazing feedback. And it just made me feel so good. So, to go back to your question, I think it's just making people feel comfortable and, telling them, like, if you mess up, we can edit it out.
Yep.
Like, we
Yep.
can stop and we can do it again. Like, it's not, and, if you say something that you regret, tell me and I won't put it in. And just that's it. And no one has ever actually asked me to take anything out. Um, and I don't know, I just feel like I can help people tell a story, and I just maybe
Mhm.
just from being in communications for 25 years and helping tell stories, doing video and stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah.
and so, yeah, I just love telling these inspirational, aspiring stories and telling these people, it's always and I try to stay away from the negativity. I try to bring on people that have something inspiring to say. I avoid politics as much as I can, even though it's very hard. But I really try on my Everything and Anything podcast, I try to just not talk about anything happening in any country with any politics if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Let them go to the news and get
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah. You're an excellent guest, so I feel
Thank you.
like I can see, and I'm certain that comms background plays a role in being engaging. I think about it similarly. There's a part of me, the performer in me, that has an eye to, like, a little bit run of show and
Yeah,
flowing smoothly and things like that, but I also feel like it's decidedly not a performance, right? It's not a hyper stylized, like, I want it to be a conversation too, so I think we're very, similar in that way in what we're, like, looking to get out of these
yeah.
interviews. Yeah.
And you're an amazing host though because you're so easy to talk to. So
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you very much.
I think you picked the right thing to do because, I always know when it's a good podcast when you forget you're on a podcast, and I forgot we were on a podcast for a little
Yeah.
while there. So, like, that's when I know it's a good podcast. So,
I love that. So speaking of, I want to take us now, make sure we don't run out of time to hit our lightning round section. So same
okay,
5 questions that I give every guest, just a um, quick answer here. Whatever comes to mind for you is perfect. Are you ready?
okay, I'm ready.
All right. Question 1. What is your favorite word to say out loud?
Um, there's a PC version or a PG version, and I'll tell you what on my podcast at the end of the year, Riverside, this platform that we use to record the video, it tells
Mhm.
you like it gives you the top moments. I said amazing so many times in 2025 in my podcast. I'm like, that's amazing. And it kept showing me saying it over and over and over. So I think amazing was my 2025 word of that I say over and over and over. So
Nice. That's amazing. Uh,
yeah.
Question 2. How about a word you know from maybe reading it, but you're not quite sure how to pronounce it?
Whenever I do my news podcast, I am so horrible at saying people's names that I have to go in sometimes and I go to you. I stop my news when I'm reading it and go in and listen to how somebody else has said it because I hate mispronouncing people's names.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
people's names I am really
Yeah.
bad at reading or it's pronouncing them correctly.
Years ago, I was in a prenatal yoga teacher training, and I the teacher in charge of the training really made a specific effort. Like, there was a small group of people, and was like, if we don't know the name, if we can't pronounce each other's names or we're struggling, don't just gloss over it. Don't just try to avoid ever saying their name again. Like,
Yeah.
stop and really ask them, how do you pronounce your name? I am committed to getting it right.
Yes.
And so I really try to do that, and I try to do it in a way that, doesn't make them feel uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
conveys like I'm committed to this, but imperfectly. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I ask people whenever they have a name that I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce, I
Mhm.
ask them like twice. I'm like, say it again. Just, I don't want to
Yeah.
mispronounce your name. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's important to call somebody who they really are. So,
Agreed. Agreed. As someone who's been a Kirsten and a Christy and a Kirsty, how about a phrase or saying you wish could be retired for good?
um, I, so I watch Summer House on Bravo, and there is a character on there that I just realized this, and he has the word like 45 times in one sentence. He's like, "I love this, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna go to the pool today and, like, then go, like, to the beach." And I wish people would stop doing that and just retire the word like. So,
Yes. It's definitely one of those like habits.
yes.
Like one of those habits, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm of a certain age. It's a tough one
Yes.
for me. Question 4, what's a communication practice or principle that's non-negotiable for you?
Um, what is a non-negotiable? I think n not having a putting something out there and there's no strategy or call to action for something. So I think in digital, it's so important whenever you're putting content out there in the digital world that it's actually going to something and not just saying, I don't know, happy 4th of July. And like, okay, why did you put that in a corporate thing? Like, great, but what's the call to action? So, and plus, I think, the other thing is like, you got to think about all these communication tools are all global. So you're saying, happy 4th of July, but only a portion of your people that are on your social media are from the United States. So people that are in Europe and Latin America and Asia Pacific have no idea what you're talking about or they don't care. So that's mine.
Nice. And what's the last thing you read, heard, or watched that really stuck with you?
Um, what is the last thing I'm reading this book called The Sylvia Mind Control Method, and it's because a guest that I had recommended it, and, she just told me to read it, and it's actually really fascinating, and it's just about she was a CIA remote viewer in the '80s, and she's been on, like, she's been on major podcasts, and then somehow she agreed to do mine. I was so thankful.
Mhm.
She was on the Sean Ryan podcast. She was on the Mayan Bialik podcast. She was like on major podcast, and I had like sent her an email. She's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And she was such a fascinating person. Where in the '80s, the CIA had this like secret remote viewing where they would be able then, and she can like go and like remote view herself to Russia to find out like what they're doing and stuff. And she found like criminals that were on the top 10 most wanted list in the US. She found many of these criminals like exactly where they were. And they were somewhere that they like the CIA never thought they would be. And she would find them.
I ju I just watched some TV show. What was it? Where this specific program was a thing.
Yeah. Her name is
I'll let
Angela
you know if I
Ford.
find
She's
it. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It was an older man, I think, who they brought in on the show, but it was this specific program that they were talking about.
Yeah. And so she told me to read this book. And I'm like, I'm reading it and it's so fascinating. And, just it makes changes the way you think about things.
Is it a nonfiction, like, telling about that, or is it about how to do the method?
It's
Like,
kind of a little bit of, like, stories about what people have done, but also, like,
mm.
how to do it. I don't think I can do it. She says anybody can do it, but I don't know if I wanna do it. So, you know, I don't know
That's
if I wanna
fair.
go see what's happening in Russia or find but yeah, she's such a fascinating person, and she was one of my, like, top 3 favorite people I
Amazing.
interviewed.
Great.
Yeah.
Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. Before I let you go, if our listeners want to learn more about you, where can they go to find you?
They can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is the real Zach, Zachre, the real Zach Re, or they can go to everythingandanythingpodcast.com or Listen Up Girl podcast. No, just listenupgirl.com, and they can find me in all 3 of those places. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. This is a great
yeah, your
conversation.
podcast is amazing. I'm so glad you had me on. So thank you
Oh,
for
thank you. I'm so glad you came.
thanks so much.
That's it for this episode of Expertly Said. We're produced by Every Little Word, a boutique content and communications agency. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Subscribe, share the episode with a colleague, or leave us a review. If you want to connect with me directly, please do. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Kristen Sweeney. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.